Everyone.
How are you this morning?
I'm doing great. I'm feel honored that you invited me on the show. Thank you.
Yes. Um, I'm super excited because a lot of people aren't familiar with Lilydale and a lot of people are. So, if you could just kind of explain what Lilydale is and how important it is to the community as a whole.
All right. I'd be happy to. So Lilydale is located in New York State, about an hour south of Buffalo, New York. And it's a quaint little town, an old Victorian town. And for over 140 years, we've had special programming, especially in the summer, a 10-week summer season of daily events, of spirit message services and healing and workshops. And it's a beautiful space that's set right on Casadega Lake, which is a perfect lake to kayak on. And we also have an old growth forest. So we have some of the oldest species in New York State of certain trees. So it's beautiful to connect with some of the old ones, as it were. And we've been doing gallery mediumship and private readings, and longer than the celebrity mediums that you see on TV. And of course, the purpose is to bring healing and to bring peace to people and to help them navigate. The biggest thing would be grief, right? How do we connect with that, but also in their own journey of the soul. I've had people come for readings that had really felt there's a separation, the illusion of separation from God, the source, creator, the divine. And after reading, when they recognize that we're connecting with their loved ones in spirit who have passed, their family members, their friends, and sometimes even pets, they can feel connected with their own soul. Connecting with those souls means we have a soul,
Yes,
and that we can
absolutely.
live and act from that place. And so people have told me over the years how grateful they are to have that recognition and that it's changed their lives. Other people, it's one of those things where it kind of has to sink in a little bit first, and they have to put some other things into practice in their lives. But Lilydale especially focuses on spiritualism. And that would be the religion, the philosophy, and science of spiritualism. So it is a religion. We do believe in God. We believe that God is all there is, and that we can connect with other planes of existence, and especially our loved ones in spirit, that love never dies. And I like to think that what we do really does support many of the world religions. You can read about it in the Bible or other spiritual books, that connection with the afterlife. But when people have actually had the conversation with their loved ones, they can see that it does exist, and they start to live their lives in a different way. And it's really beautiful to see. And we do believe and understand, and we move into a space of knowing. uh, you know Believing has that element of the faith, but knowing is the true trust. And people have to come to it in their own time, in their own experience, and we don't work to convert anybody to our way of thinking. Again, they have to come to it in their own time. It's the difference between someone telling you the story and you living the story. And Lilydale is a beautiful place for people to share about their spiritual experiences, their own connections that they have felt with their loved ones in spirit who visited them. And it's just nice to have the confirmation sometimes that that really did happen. They really did come to me in dreams. They are seeing that I just graduated from college in this way, or got married, or I just have a new grandson, or I'm going through difficulties in my marriage, and they're right there with me. There are all kinds of instances in our life where it's nice to have that connection with trusted loved ones, that they are still with us, they're still interested in our lives. And so that's a big focus at Lilydale, and I'm so proud to be able to help in that capacity. I've been a registered medium since 2003, so a lot of years have passed.
Yeah.
And I love what I do, and I really appreciate the trust that people put in what I do, and I really honor them as souls and helping them on their journey.
Thank you. That's a wonderful explanation of what Lily Dell is and the history. And we're gonna. Good morning, Michael. We love when you join us. And so, a little bit more about you. You touched on it. You were been a certified medium since 2003, but something says it's a little bit longer than that.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So I grew up in a spiritually minded family, so we were consistently talking about our spiritual experiences, our dreams, and I grew up with stories of my grandfather's healing abilities. And my mother actually is a medium, and she got registered the same year I did. So,
So,
and my parents' spiritual journey has definitely helped to shape mine. They never tried to force intuition or spirit contact on me. They were only there to foster those things. And some people come to me because their children are experiencing spirit contact and they're not quite sure how to handle those things. And so we talk about it and how best to not necessarily put them under the microscope, but to gently guide and support them through that journey. I just have to go on a little bit of a tangent there since I mentioned it, that if you do have a child or a teenager that does have that ability, it's good if you don't just tell everybody. So we need to allow our children their privacy about those things and not put them on the spot, especially not try to put them into any kind of performance with others. We need to help them to stabilize them in themselves energetically. And I do encourage people to wait until they are adults so that they can make that decision for themselves. So if you have a child prodigy, I just want to make sure I mention that you want to let them go ahead and be a child. So that's where I was with this. My mother and father are just wonderful parents, and a lot of spiritual discussions. I grew up in circles, watching my mother develop and in her circle of friends and beyond. And when I started into college, I also started into classes at Lilydale. And at first I was like, oh gosh, I know I have sensed these things, but there I am sitting in my first circle, and I could see a face transposed over the teacher of that particular circle that night. And I was like, oh gosh, and they said, go ahead and if you've received anything, even if you think it's nothing big. And I did. And she says, oh yes, I know exactly who that is. And so I gave my first message in that format. And it was just really exciting. And it was easy for me to develop. So I was doing a lot during those college years, not just getting a degree, but I was getting my spirit school degree through that. And it just came very easily and naturally to me. And I'm so grateful for all the teachers and all of my peer students that let me do this and develop. And so over the years, I moved into that understanding that I need to be a medium. This is what I was born to do. And so it's been my delight and my pleasure to be able to do that. I am one of the youngest registered mediums, and that still holds true today. Most people don't come to this until they're much older. So I get all the time, goodness, you're so young. And of course, I am getting a little older now. Still, most people that are registered mediums in Lilydale are, retired from other jobs, other careers. They've had other lives that they've led, and then they're able to develop their mediumship and learn and grow from there. So I feel blessed that I was able to give that energy, the power, the fascination with spiritualism and mediumship and healing, the time and practice that it needed. And I've been able to, since establishing myself as a medium, become married and have children, and balancing the life of being a wife, a mother, and a medium, and also teach development classes and spiritual development for decades now, and it's a great joy to watch my students develop in themselves those mediumship abilities to help other people.
That is beautiful. And it's so nice that you had that supportive family early on and that it wasn't hidden or kept from you or it's like, oh, and then you have all these experiences. Oh yeah, it runs in the family, and you're like, what? So,
and that's it's rare for that to happen. I recognize that. So many of my students and clients, this is something that they don't feel that they can talk about with their families, that it would be understood or supported. So I do know that I got the special treatment on that. I chose well in that regard. But a lot of people learn through struggle, and many people, their intuition has to heighten in order to survive their circumstances.
Yeah.
And so there is this igniting of the soul that has to happen. And so many mediums, unfortunately, have been put through abusive situations in their families and in their lives, and where they've had to kind of lean back on their soul because they weren't able to trust the people that were in their vicinity. And so they're nurtured in a different capacity. And there's that kind of tempered by fire thing that happens through that. And by and large, they have to move through a lot of their fears. They have to move into a space of trust with the divine and past a lot of the drama, the illusions of others, the interpretations of events, to reframe them so that they see their strengths and they see hope through that journey instead.
And that's beautiful, because that's kind of what happened for me. I mean, I've known early on, but didn't know what was going on until my first class. And it was kind of like baptism by fire. It's like I have a teacher who's well known here on Long Island, and she just throws you off the deep end. It's like, welcome to class. Here you go.
Yes. Well, sometimes people have to kind of go into the immersion process. I tell my mediumship students that this is about spiritual unfoldment within yourself. A person needs to work through whatever issues, whatever is holding them back, because it will reflect in their mediumship otherwise. And mediumship is not for everyone in a professional capacity. It's very important that you be of even mind to do the work. And being able to recognize what peace is, to speak to your podcast today, but also how to maintain that, because you're going to be in the flow of connection and conversation with others, and you need to be able to hold your own energy, your own light, and not have that be subverted by others. But also it's like an active passivity that is happening simultaneously. And that some people need to do more spiritual development before they venture into their intuitive or mediumship development in a big way. So I encourage people who have that interest, all well and good, but please do the work beforehand, because you're going to be thrown into the midst of so many people's problems. And if you are an empath, you will feel them as if they were your own.
If they're your own. And as a side note, I just recently had a couple of experiences, and I'm like, is this me or my son? Because my son's team was in the playoffs, and my stomach was like, oh God. And I know how his nerves are, but I'm like, am I feeling him? And I swear I had to have been feeling him, because after the game, I'm fine. So I'm like, yeah, I felt his nerves, or the collective team nerves. And sometimes it's easy for me to be in a flow and forget. And it's like, oh yeah. It's like, well, why do I feel this way? It's like, oh, it's not mine. And I have to remember to separate that. So that's always important. So what you said is very good reminder of, you got to remember as an empath, you're going to feel somebody else's feelings, and you got to kind of find a way to separate, or that I acknowledge your feelings, and then how can I help you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I term that compassionate detachment.
I like that.
So we can have compassion for what they're going through. Fall into it too much with them, we're not able to then give them the hand up. And so that's what the angels do for us, right? So you have to also ask yourself, what would spirit do in this instance? Sometimes people just need you to listen. Sometimes people are just angry. They're grieving. They don't like what's happening in their life, in a relationship, or the loss that they're going through, and it's deeply, deeply troubling, some of the things that people are going through. But if you enter into the fray and become a crying mess, you can't help them. You can't effectively help them. So you have to keep that in mind. And, I am strongly empathic myself. I'm strongly clairsentient and claircognizant as a medium. And so I've had to learn how to buffer energy. Just to kind of go back a little into my background, as a child, I was extremely quiet around others. In fact, I didn't trust wanting to speak to anybody outside of my family. So it was interesting for me at school, as you can imagine. I was the quiet one that didn't want to even respond to the teacher. It was energetically very difficult for me to, because having grown up in the bosom of my family's love, as it were, and then exposed, I could feel other people's dramas, and they were crowding in on me just in the course of being at school. Different students, their lives, the teacher, a whole 9 yards, and just how everybody was feeling. And so I eventually had to learn how to buffer energy so I could survive. And I was able to then find my voice. And it was easy for me to then connect and converse with people. And now, it's a completely different world. So I've come a long way.
And I'm sure that there's a lot of peace that comes with that.
Absolutely.
So, Willa, how do you personally define peace?
So, peace is a relative term. And I even say this to clients sometimes, because they'll say, is my loved one in spirit at peace? Because what do they have? Rest in peace. They can be quite concerned about their loved ones in spirit. So as a medium, I focus on bringing the essence of a spirit through, what it feels like to be them, how they react to things. A lot of times personality, physical appearance, what they had before their passing, what they thought about the client or other people around them, and how that was unfolding. And also moving into version 2.0 of themselves, going through life review, having to look at the good, the bad, the otherwise. And that could be quite a process, because spiritual progression is eternal and infinite. There's always something more to learn and grow and be. So the reason I say peace is a relative term, and I mean, you've had a variety of guests on your show already. People have different understandings of what peace is to them. There might be some universal understandings, but by and large, my peace would not be your peace, would not be someone else's peace. Exactly. Some people are very heavy into the drama, so they really like a little bit of chaos. They like a little bit of spice. They bring a lot of pepper to their circumstance. And so sometimes I'll connect with a person in spirit, and I can tell they're that kind of person. They just love it. They thrive on the drama, the soap opera of life, and they really like to be very invested in their loved ones and have their opinions, and they can still kind of get upset about things, versus other people in spirit who are just like, it's a-okay. They're real chill. They're just, and they're in a different version of peace. My peace is very similar to the way our lake gets. Our lake is a spring-fed lake, and in one section it's like 50 feet deep, but it can be like glass. And so my piece is floating in a kayak on the mirror of the lake, and just kind of hearing the drip, of water off the kayak paddle. And then here comes the swan to come up next to me. And so that's like, oh, like that's my peace, if you will. And I think it's okay that people have different understandings of peace. For some people, they love skydiving, and that brings them peace. And so honor that everybody is, it's not equal. They're different versions of peace, and that's okay. It's just like with love. The love we have, romantic love, is very different from what we might, how we love a child and how we love a friend. And, they're not equal, and neither is peace. But what brings me peace, there'll be moments where I'll need to go take a walk in nature. And thankfully I can step out the house. I can
Enjoying it.
turn left to the lake or turn right to the woods, and I am there. Meditation and prayer are always really important for me. And I can talk a little bit later on about prayer force if you'd like. Self-care is always important. I am very blessed because of where I live. I have not just my family, but I have my spiritual family. So I think that can bring people a lot of peace, to have people of like mind, like intention that they can connect with. But certainly in my roles as a wife and a mother, it brings me so much peace. Like my husband, he just knows exactly how to hold me. And the containment of energy that he's able to give me in any space, it's definitely there. Or just watching my children, I get a smile on my face watching them grow. And I even remember back when new babies, and you know how it's just such a transition, right? And you're thinking, I'm feeding them. I barely have any sleep. And I could feel myself dwindling a little bit energetically because the lack of sleep, but also I was so used to eating what I call spiritual food, reading spiritual books, being able to go take the classes and do all the other things and not have them interrupted. And so I had to become very conscious in those moments that I had to fill my cup.
Yeah.
And so even while I was feeding, I might have one of my spiritual books next to me and just be able to read a sentence real quickly and then chew on that for some hours. And it would bring me that essence of the spiritual food. So it really helped me in those moments to realize that even if I was feeling the chaos that I had something I could always fall back on. Those spiritual words uplift me. They raise the vibration. If I notice I'm going low in energy, I'll read something and it just boosts me. I let it boost me. The words resonate and I can feel my soul says yes. And then my body can say yes, and my emotional body can say yes. And certainly my exploration of the afterlife has brought me peace. I'm not scared of death, and that really does help. I have ways I'd prefer to pass, of course.
I'm quite a lot to one.
But I'm not scared of mortality issues, and that really has helped me to find peace.
Yes, a lot of people are afraid of death and dying. And I can't say that I am. I can say that I'm worried for the people that would be left behind, more so than my own passing. And so I totally can resonate with what you just said. It's not a matter. I'm more worried for the people being left behind because of that grief that we both know very well, that many people know very well. Some people never let go of grief.
Right. I was just speaking with a gentleman yesterday. I was on one of my walks and I went past his house, and his wife passed recently. And, it can be tricky. What do you say to a person? And especially because they're in a hypersensitive space and they're raw. And is lonely. You're not just missing your person, you're missing the habit of that person, the everyday of what it felt like to interact with them. and just be able to share. And every time you like try to pick up something, it reminds you of them. It's hard to evade it, or get away from it. And he was outside, and he was picking up something from the yard, and I said hi, and I said, I just want you to know I'm thinking of you, and I'm sending a lot of healing your way. And we didn't usually talk. I usually talked with his wife, but we've known each other over the years. And he turned his blue eyes at me, and he walked over and he says, "Thank you." And I said, "I know you're going through a hard time right now, and I don't know what to say, but I just want to tell you that I love you." And he says, "That's the best thing anybody said to me."
And I'm sure that that was something that brought him a lot of ease and a lot of peace.
Yeah.
So that naturally flows into the next question I love to ask. And how do you bring others peace? How do you help them find that peace?
It's taking those moments with them. I do have, because of the nature of my job, I do this a lot. So it was me acknowledging him, and so we had quite a discussion. And I was a hospice volunteer for a number of years, so this happened then as well, that I would either talk with the patient or extensively with their loved ones that were caring for them, and they're able to tell me things that they can't say to their family or their friends.
Yeah.
So having an outlet for that, knowing that I'm not judging them, I'm just going to hold space for them while they go through that, means a great deal. And I said to him, I remember, because I could tell he just, people get into a grief funk. They just can't. He was in that mode that day, yesterday. And I said, I remember watching you and your wife at church, and you put your arm around her and you just cuddle up next to her. And I could just see how much you loved each other. And he beamed at me. And now he's not normally a big smiler. He beamed at me to have that memory brought back to him, because he misses so much being able to cuddle with her. But to have that memory and that recognition that somebody else saw it, right? And that they weren't judging him for, she'd been in a lot of pain prior to passing. And he had felt judgment from family members of how they thought he was caring for her or not caring for her. There's all those things, right? All those little nuances of relationships that are there. And he really was able to kind of unload and unpack. And so a lot of what I do in my efforts to bring peace to other people is let them unpack for a bit, and also validate it's okay that you feel awful. It's okay that you're angry. And I even said to him, I said, because he felt her a little bit, but not as much as he liked. And he was just really, she's probably going through life review. He knows the understandings of that. But I said, well, the other part of that is your side of the homework. Working through how to go ahead and let yourself be joyful and centered again, because you're more likely to be able to feel your loved ones in spirit when you're in that state than if you are angry or numbed out, because usually it's angry, numb, back and forth that can happen with a person. And it's, I sometimes I just say things. I even said, it's kind of like dealing with a tantruming child, and they can't hear you. They're just tantruming, and you could be trying to talk to them, ring the doorbell, knock at the door, try to get their attention, get them changed off of that, and they don't want to be. And he says, that's exactly right. I've been a tantruming child. Like, he was okay with me saying it because it's true. You understand? If you are able to deliver it in that kind of honest, true, sincere way, and I could see just like piece by piece, we were unlocking some of these things, so that the next time he starts to feel like he's heading down that road, he can say, I have a choice on my pattern of reaction here. So it's all about patterns of reaction on what is the one that's going to help you or it's going to hinder you. And we have to recognize it, that we have a choice. Sometimes we're in our emotions. We feel like peace isn't an option for us.
Right.
We definitely think that joy isn't an option for us. And we start to move into that separation from God, that separation from even our other loved ones. So it's a big part of it when we're wanting to reach for peace. When people talk about it, there's three main kinds of peace, right? There's spiritual peace, that peace that you have with God, the divine concept. There's the relational peace that we have with others. And then there's also that emotional peace that we have with ourselves, that peace within. And I could see he was settling into that peace within. And it was just really beautiful. I love watching it unfold within people. You could just see the change. And there are times when clients will tell me, they'll say, I've been in therapy for quite some time, and my therapist, my counselor, my psychologist, whatever, had referred me to you. I'm like, oh, okay, great. And I feel that this has helped me more than so much of what I've processed through. And I said, well, there's still value to the therapy on this, but it is
absolutely.
what I do is to some extent spiritual counseling in those moments. And sometimes we're having to work through how people have hurt each other. And so there's forgiveness discussion that's happening during that reading. And it's really beautiful to be part of that and bringing peace to others. Sometimes a reading gives more questions than it does answers, because you also have to know that everybody has to pace in their own way. And what's a big reason people don't have peace? Their expectations they have about others.
Yep.
And what those others should be saying or doing for them. And there's resentments or this I'm not being seen, I'm not being heard, or there are that deeper sense of the tug of war, the tension that happens with a person. So sometimes people that you have to stir up the mud a little bit, and then they're able to really say, I take my part of this and now I let it go with love. And so, yeah, I've seen a lot of things over the years with folks, and I could go on, but yeah, those are some things I would share with you today.
And that's very helpful. And so say we're having one of those moments, whether it's a deep grief moment or expectation moment, and we are out of sorts. We're not in a peaceful element within ourselves or with those externally. What's kind of like in your toolbox? What kind of tips and tricks do you use to either pull yourself out or pull others out of that kind of funk, whether it be grief or just life in general? Because we all have that life sucks moment. I mean, we have them daily, I'm sure. But how do you
people go through those kinds of phases? They last a little longer than what you'd like. Yes.
Yeah. So, what do you use?
Well, there's so many things in the toolbox, aren't there? And when sometimes people will look in the box and they're like, there's nothing in there. Well, a lot of it's their attitude. They're bringing it and they see it. And other people, they look in and it's like a Mary Poppins bag. All of a sudden, here's this and that and the other. And, they're just ready to MacGyver the world. And I think it's a recognition, first of all, what helps me is that prayer force is life force. And so when we truly move into faith prayer rather than worry prayer, when we really move into that, you feel regenerated, you feel restored, especially because you're putting it into bigger hands than yours. Many times when we're trying to force something, our head just hits that right up against that wall, and we're so frustrated and so angry. And then all of a sudden we just say, you know what, I give up. And then give it over to God. And then sometimes things get cleared up in 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. And it's great. But there's this part of you says, why didn't it get cleaned up when I wanted it to? And all and instead of being like truly grateful, right, we have this continued grindiness. So a big thing is not just the prayer force as life force, but recognizing when we're being grindy things, when we're really a little bit, I am displeased, like this, this kind of not accepting and not enjoying those other simple pleasures because we have this expectation of this other big thing. And I'll tell you what I remember reading about, and this happened in history, and this is a real thing, reading about the Warsaw Ghetto during World War II, and the Jews that were there and having to deal with the intensity of all of that, shall we say.
Yeah.
And at that point, even children, the young children, didn't even know what a tree was because there wasn't any vegetation. They didn't know what any the things that we take for granted, and they were very much, it was a hard time in history for them.
Yes.
But there was a wonderful rabbi that did encourage them to use a quieting method. And it really comes down what we would call today mindfulness. And so he encouraged them to, whatever you do it slowly, do it deliberately. If it's as simple as let's set the table, you're going to place it as if in great honor and respect for all of it. Do it extremely slowly. Now, some of us would just slap that thing down. They'd be like, my life, right? Place it. And then you're placing your fork and your knife and your spoon. And there's an arrangement of just being very aware of your body and your intention when you're doing this. And it fascinated me because, there they are on the cusp of thinking at any moment they could die or a loved one could die and they're never going to get out of this. And this despair could take them over. When we do that, if we just one foot in front of the other, and even when people have spiritual epiphanies, let's say they've had a near-death experience or they've had a spiritual experience that's uplifted them, they're still going to have to chop wood, carry water.
Yeah.
So you have to embrace those simple pleasures. And I remember doing this back to when my children were little and I felt like I couldn't even do anything. I would have to, while I was washing the dishes, I would just pray for myself and pray for them and, just be in that space of deliberately one foot in front of the other. And I think that's a big thing when we're going through difficulties in life, when we're going through grief, it's just do it in the most honoring way you can. And that when you honor your life in that kind of way, find glory in some measure of the simple pleasure that's right there for you. It starts to shift your consciousness. And then you're able to see beauty in things. Just the way the water looks as it drips off of something, the green of a plant that's in front of you. There's a slowing, but a gratitude just for those moments. It has saved me so many times. And if you're a person and you're having to sit next to someone who's ill, and you're thinking, what? The hours are dragging by, and you're chained in your existence there next to someone, and you're doing your best to hold your space, but you're thinking of how you're so weary. You're so very weary. That is where I would be having a spiritual book to, again, feed myself the spiritual food. I pray. Our tendency would be to try to go into mindless activities, playing games or looking at your phone or those kinds of things. But try to be deliberate through that and focus on the energy that's around you. You could focus on really understanding what's going on with your loved one on an energetic level and start to practice connecting with their soul. And so there are lots of other things like that, lots of other tips and tricks, but I just wanted to touch on some of those, especially if you feel like you're going through it. This too shall pass. And that cliche exists. Why? Because it's true.
Exactly. And it's one we go to a lot. There are times where I find myself saying it to myself, this too shall pass, or I'm going to get through this, or I'm going to be okay, or traffic doesn't last forever.
Traffic. And you know,
So,
the thing is, sometimes we have to wait. Let's say someone else is destructing next to us, and they've, in essence, lost executive function.
mhm.
And you're thinking, the empath in me does not feel peaceful.
Nope.
What does a sensitive do? A sensitive amplifies or magnifies the energy around them. But with great power comes great responsibility.
Yeah.
Another cliche that is true.
Yeah.
So you have a choice. Are you going to amplify that energy? Are you going to magnify that energy? Because you could kapow them if you really wanted to.
Yeah.
But what would it serve?
That
And
is the greater question.
what would it serve? And so there's a place in us that has to say, you know what? I hold my peace. You know, they say, forever hold your peace. Hold your peace. Hold yourself. You're responsible for the energy that you bring. As much as you think, well, they aren't they responsible for the end? They're living in a front and coming from a place of ignorance to some extent, and we don't have to move necessarily into a space of spiritual superiority, but we have to have this recognition that they're having a moment, and we're going to do our best to hold our own, and we're not going to engage and make it worse, because having an aggressive emotional response would cement the karmic entanglement further. Did I scare you enough?
Not me, but yes.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
I know.
we don't want to cement that karmic entanglement further. So sometimes having peace means that you hold the peace for yourself in those moments and for others. And as much as you think they're not getting it, there's a place in them that's a little irritated that you're peaceful. There's a little place in them that would almost like you to destruct with them, because they want the friction or the energy they might get from that. Hold your peace. Hold your peace. And you have to wait for some of their storm to pass until executive function has returned, until other things have returned. And I will say that we have to leave room for people to shift and change. And you had mentioned earlier trying to deal with a teenager, right?
Yeah.
So there's an example of sometimes certain teenagers are prone to losing executive function.
Some.
No, I definitely wouldn't say all, but some having those occasions. And we have to learn how to react. It's a process, and because we want to develop the virtues in our children, right? The virtues of kindness and forbearance, patience, manners, all of those virtues. And a big part of that is trying to work through spiritual discipline with them, and helping to give them a measure of containment that isn't aggressive discipline, but is assertive and is loving and firm. Again, with that compassionate detachment. And so what happens if let's say you're an intuitive, no doubt your child, hello, is probably intuitive and knows just what buttons are to push. It takes an intuitive to know. So they're like, I know what to boop. and you're like, that's my button. Don't touch my button. Of course they're going to go for your button. So you have to decide whether you're going to let someone press your buttons. So because they're going to go for it. So finding your peace is recognizing, even if you have a button, that's a tender spot, if you will, that you have a choice of your reaction, because it's not about what happens to you. It's how you react to it that dictates the event. And that's where you can really escalate with a person if you so choose. And sometimes we have to recognize that they hormonally, right? The body chemistry alone is a lot to look at. And so we have to give that space. The other thing I would mention is exercise being very important as an outlet. If you are a sensitive, it is very easy for you to feel energy gets trapped in your body. And it can be in that space of pain. It could come physically or emotionally, or you could feel a lot of the demand in those kinds of ways. And exercise helps to squeeze and release. So even if you just maybe had a confrontation with your teenager, definitely exercise will help. Not just the physical movement, helping you get out of things, but also what it does with your body chemistry and what it does energetically for you as a sensitive. It's really a great way to reset your body so that you can find your peace more readily, because otherwise it can just stay stirred up. And sensitive children do need physical outlet. I joke that some, like with dogs, some dogs you can walk, some dogs need to run.
So, yeah.
And that's how it can be with people. And so we have to know when we have given them enough of that kind of physical outlet. So in all the areas of life, but physical is very, very important, especially in this day and age where people are more sedentary. Children are more prone to being on computers and screens, and
Right.
that hampers a lot of the energy. And then they haven't moved into a space of being charitable with others. So another part of spiritual parenting is helping them to see beyond their own passion of the moment and move into how to be in service to others.
Yeah.
And you're thinking, well, be in service to me, do the chores at home, all well and good. But it's also about being service to outside people who are in need. And it starts to get them out of their mindset of, I don't like this, me, like people can get into
A
a self.
very myopic world that
Yeah.
they live in.
So, finding peace, it means kind of going out in the world and starting to recognize how to love our fellow human, even if we don't agree with some of them, love our fellow humans so that we can bring peace to the world through our actions, our help, our upliftment of other souls in those experiences. And I think it starts as children. It starts as children.
It
Yeah.
does. That is something that I most definitely can say I've instilled in my son. Go, from church to even now, he's, as fellow parents will come up to me and say, anytime I see your son in the wild, he's so polite, he's so helpful. And to me, that makes me feel good. I'm not one of those parents when a teacher says, oh, he's so good in classrooms, and are we talking about the same kid? I'm like, thank God, just thank God.
Well, that's the other thing. There's the public versus private persona that can happen. And he can let his hair down around you, as it were, compared to with everyone else, especially with a sensitive child. They've had to hold themselves and be a good person so much.
Right. And then they come home.
They're home, and it's almost like they're in a state of collapse because they had to hold themselves in the societal space for so long. And so they need to just have this, and Rudolf Steiner, he's a lot of people follow the Waldorf school kind of stuff. Anyway, Rudolf Steiner was a very interesting man who spoke and wrote essays, spiritual understandings. Children, for the first 7 years, they really, it's almost like energetic requirement for them to be in their mother's area, their space, their aura. And a big reason for that is they kind of need to dock with the mothership for a while to find peace, to find regulation. And so many people don't realize that. So they're wanting their little children to self-regulate a little too early. And it puts them into a state of not finding peace. And so we have to honor that. that yes, they can run off, do something, and then they can come back. And that still continues for another 7 years. It continues in a slightly different format where they're starting to need to go off without you. But then they need to come back. And sometimes just being in their mom's energy again, they're just like, that was a lot. I can't handle this. This is, you know? And so it just sort of carries on. And a parent that can understand energetically that that's what their child needs through that, they'll have a different vantage point of what this child is bringing emotionally to them. And they'll respect that process and not get too hypersensitive themselves about that response. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And I don't know the stage of growth your child or children are in, but as a parent, as a teenager, it's hard at times because it just is. You're a parent. But I do try and give him some space. I mean, he'll tell you I'm a helicopter. I try not to be. I just need to know that, he's okay. And that's on me. I understand that. He was like, go away. Like, no. But he also has that safe space that he can come to me. And I think that's important because there are a lot of kids who don't necessarily have that safe space.
Absolutely.
So he does have that space with me, and he does come to me because he's at peace. And I can say I don't agree with that idea. I don't agree with that decision. You did what? And I'm glad I hear after the fact rather than you plan on doing it.
There you go.
But I really finds the piece of like, I can tell my mom this. He might be a little trepidatious at first, but I can tell my mom this.
Yes, that makes a big difference for them to know that they have a safe space to roost in for a bit if they need to, or just to share with. And I was blessed with a mom. I can literally tell her anything, and I'm doing my best to try to emulate that. It is challenging some days because you're busy trying to live your life, and you're satisfy the needs that you feel that you need to follow through with in your life. But also there's such great responsibility with another child, the child, and making sure that the children are being helped through that, and building autonomy for them, and so that they can feel that they can make those decisions. Sometimes mother fear can be so entrenched that it can be almost incapacitating to the child. What I mean by that is that the thoughts we have about our children, spoken or unspoken, they can energetically feel. Because, hello, you're attuned, you're connected, whatever. And it behooves the mother to move into a space of trust. Now, that's really tricky sometimes because you're thinking, I won't trust these other people. I don't know, things that are going on, right? And the most important thing that we can do is trust our children. When they feel that it really buoys them up. Now, just speaking energetically, like in the aura, when people are thinking of us, sometimes we know they're thinking us. Sometimes we can feel the negative or positive of their thoughts at us. If they're negative, sometimes it feels like arrows, slings and arrows, right? Other times it can feel like there's a hook that has just come into our energy and it's trying to, like a grappling hook. And it's unpleasant, and we're thinking, oh my gosh, I need to cut that bond, that tie, whatever it is, right? I don't like this. And then other times we can feel what a healing lift it is when people are thinking of us. We can feel so grateful for their prayers, their belief in us, their support in us. And so we have to remember that as parents, that how we're energetically thinking of our children. So if we're in that state of, I'm worried, I don't trust it. And again, it's like a hook. And so what does that kid go? Oh, ow, 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 so they're going to.
My son's called me out. He's like, you have to trust me. I'm not going to be your baby forever. And it's like, you will be my baby forever, but you have a point. So,
Well, it's interesting because when my husband and I went to Rome some years back, there's a beautiful statue of La Pieta, which is Mother Mary, and who does she have in her arms? She has Jesus in her arms, and it's so beautiful. And I as soon as I saw it, I started crying because I understood it. Because when he sculpted this, it just makes me want to cry again. Mother Mary is bigger in dimension than Jesus is. Now you think, well, why would that be? Because it shows the prescience of Mary. When you are a mother of a newborn and you're holding them in your arms, and imagine for her, she had this prescience that even as a grown man, what would happen to him. And so it's a symbolic of we hold them as if they were all the ages. And then, that feeling of she held him after his passing and what that felt like. And so there's the joy and the tragedy that combine for all of us as mothers, because we want to protect our children from all of those things. We want them to have the joy and have the peace. And so here we have this amazing symbolic representation of great mother's love. She supported him on his journey. She couldn't make it be any different except to love him in all of those stages as her baby, but as a man and as what he represented to the world eventually. And so I feel that's very symbolic of how it is for us as parents.
Yes.
And I'm glad he calls you out about it to some extent, because it's a reminder to all of us as mothers, as fathers even, that the energy we think about our children matters. It matters. Even if we felt disappointed, it's really hard to watch them belly flop in the pool. You're like, oh my goodness, like their belly's all pink. Like, don't do that again. This is how you do it. And they're like, I know, Mom. Right? You're like, but you just tweak it like this and you won't belly flop. And I won't be like,
yeah, that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah, so I get it. But at some point you just have to say, okay, that's a lesson, and they will learn and keep having to learn as long as they need to. You can't circumvent someone else's spiritual homework. The universe always knows whose name gets the check mark on things. And the vast majority, as I said before, of people will learn through struggle. And even if you were to say, okay, I see ahead on this obstacle course that this is going to happen, but you could walk around it, right? If you did it this way, I know, Mom. And then what do? Go right on through it. And you're just like, hello, barbed wire and all this other stuff. Like,
no, yeah, it's hard.
It is hard, but we have to trust in their journey. We have to move out of the worry, which is an unqualified energy state of worry, fear, anger, resentment, all that stuff, and into qualified energy, which is love and peace and joy. And dealing with this trial, it can sometimes be like that in other people's lives with the projects that they're having to work with co-workers on, or sometimes their baby is a project or some other event that's happening in their life that they're having to work through their worry symbolically about that child. And so this can apply to other people, but it's that my definition of a saint is not someone who goes and lives in a cave and says, oh, it's real easy to stay even keeled if you don't have to be around.
Even if it's not easy, it's easier than living.
Yes. But my definition of a saint is someone who has to go and live among the people and find balance and peace. And it doesn't mean you have to be a goody two-shoes all the time, but it does behoove you to be very aware of the energy you're bringing. And we can all think of the beautiful, nurturing people in our lives that, wow, we can talk to them. We can tell them anything and we feel supported, even if we veered off the path. Mm-hmm. When you think on those people, you're just so immensely grateful. And then you can all think of people who have criticized us, that we felt completely inept in their eyes, and how that felt. And so we have a choice. of how we're doing this. And it's a process. And if we don't get it right one day, it's the repetitive patterning that it's the biggest issue. Because you're thinking, well, what is my child going to remember about me once they're grown? Like, what kind of memories do I want to have? It's I think if people can remember they're playing a long game rather than a short game, it'll change their reaction and the measure of peace they want to bring to that relationship and that situation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And there's so much more to peace than what we see. And
Yes.
it's more of what we feel and how we bring and help others peace.
Yes.
So I'm very grateful for Willa joining us this morning and sharing her thoughts on peace, what brings her peace, and how we can all share in supporting others on their journey and being as peaceful as possible. So 1 second, I'm going to put Willa in the back for a moment. I want to thank you all for joining us and to tune in next week for thoughts on peace and how to bring it into our lives again. Have a wonderful day.